Oliver, the tax manager at Plus Accounting. We've learned from talking to our clients that they want more from us than just their accounts. They want guidance, advice and a range of products and services to make their busy lives easier. Your personal tax position is an important area to understand. I will therefore discuss the self-assessment tax return and the penalties incurred if this is not filed on time. So, I'm going to talk about late tax return penalties and the important dates. The first important date is the 31st of January. The deadline for submitting your tax return for the year ended 5th of April 2014 was the 31st of January 2015. If you miss the 31st of January deadline, you'll be charged an automatic penalty of £100. The next important date is the 30th of April. If your tax return is 3 months late, then in addition to the penalty of £100, further penalties of £10 per day are payable, up to a maximum of £900. The 31st of July is the next important date. This is because if your tax return is 6 months late, there's a further penalty of £300 or 5% of the tax due if that's higher than £300. And then back round to the 31st of January again, if your tax return is 12 months late, there's a further penalty of £300 or 5% of the tax if that's higher. Then in addition to the tax return penalties, there's also late payment penalties. So the deadline for paying tax due for the year ended 5th of April 2014 is also the 31st of January 2015. That's the same deadline for submitting the tax return. Interest will be charged on any tax paid late from the 1st of February to the date the tax is paid. The interest rate can vary, but actually in practice it's been 3% since the 29th of September 2009. And the important dates to be aware of as far as the late payment of tax penalties is concerned are, firstly, the 28th of February. If any tax is outstanding 1 month after the due date, a 5% surcharge will be issued, and that's 5% of any tax that's due. Then on the 31st of July, if any tax is outstanding, 5 months later, a further 5% surcharge will be issued. So far, in addition to the penalties for the late tax return, the late payment surcharge is 10% of any tax due. And then on the 31st of January, if any tax is paid more than 12 months late, it will be subject to a further 5% surcharge, making the total surcharge 15%. So if we look at some examples of the implications of the late tax return penalties and the late payment surcharge. So in all of these cases, we'll assume that the tax return is sent in online and the tax bill is £1,000. So in the first case, this is a tax return for the year 2013-14. The tax return is submitted and all tax is paid on the 31st of January 2015. So the tax of £1,000 is paid on time and the tax return is submitted on time, so that all that's payable is the tax of £1,000. Now let's contrast this with a tax return that's submitted 6 months later and the tax is paid on the 31st of July 2015. In that situation, you'll have not only the tax of £1,000 to pay, but also a penalty of £1,000 for the late submission of the tax return. There'll be interest of £14 and a late payment penalty of £50. So if the tax return is submitted 6 months late and the tax is paid 6 months late, the total liability is increased from £1,000 to over £2,000. If the tax return is submitted and tax paid just 1 day later on the 1st of August 2015, then the penalty for the late submission of the tax return rises to £1,300 and the late payment penalty rises to £100. So as you can see, the total payment due is £2,414. The tax return is submitted on the 31st of January 2016, that's a year late now. The tax payable is still £1,000, the penalty is still £1,300, the interest has risen to £29 and the late payment penalty is still £100, so that's £2,429. But again, 1 day later on the 1st of February 2016, there's tax to pay of £1,000, penalty has risen to £1,600, interest of £30 and the late payment penalty is risen to £150. So the total amount payable is £2,780. So tax return is a year and 1 day late. You can actually increase your liability to the Inland Revenue from £1,000 to nearly £2,800. So it is important to be aware of the deadlines and ensure that tax returns are submitted on time and that the tax is paid on time.